PE Agri. PE Agri, are you there? All right, looks like PE Agri is still battling with his microphone. I'm going to request Rotarian Margaret Nsibirwa, my sister, to propose a loyal toast.
Thank you very much, President Conrad. Let's toast to His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
To His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda. All right, I'm going to request our senior Rotarian, Governor Peace Taremwa, to lead us in the object of Rotary.
Thank you, President Conrad. I hope that's the kind of assignment you give to governors. Let me check it out and get back and get to it. The object of Rotary is to encourage and foster the idea of service as a basis of worthy enterprise, and in particular to encourage and foster for us the development of acquaintance as an opportunity for service. Second, high ethical standards in the business and professions, the recognition of the worthiness of all useful occupations, and the dignifying of each Rotarian's occupation as an opportunity to serve society. Third, the application of the idea of service in each Rotarian's personal, business, and community life. And fourth, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world fellowship of business and professional persons united in the ideal of service.
Thank you very much, Governor Peace. And at this moment, friends, I'm going to request members of the Rotary Club of Lubowa, if you have any apologies, let's have them registered. All right, looks like we're going to have 100% attendance. Could we go to announcements? I know there are very many announcements, but let's try and be brief. Announcements. Installations and all. If we can have this done within 2 minutes, I'll be very grateful. Yes, Winnie, you can take your seat.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Rotary Club of Makindye West Kampala will have its installation on Thursday, 25th June this year at 2 p.m. at the Makindye Country Club. It will be both a physical and virtual event. We shall advise you of the links, the virtual links. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Daniel, for that announcement. Any more announcements?
Yes, my President, good evening. This is Ronald RC Entebbe.
Yes.
I would like to announce that 17th June, RC Entebbe will be hosting a joint fellowship of all Wednesday fellowshipping clubs. A link will be sent through shortly. We request all members to join us. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you very much, President Ronald, all the way from Entebbe. And count on the Rotary Club of Lubowa. We shall be part of that joint fellowship. Any more announcements?
Hello, Mr. President.
Yes, Donna.
The Rotary Club of Seguko, President Rebecca Namuyimba, on the 28th of June, about 2 weeks from now. Sunday, 28th. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Donna, Rotarian Donna, for that announcement. Any more announcements?
Yes, yeah, this is your sister.
Yes.
We have our installation on the 30th of June. This is Chisugu Victoria View, and I'll be sharing out the flyer with the rest of in due course. We hope you can all join us on the 30th of June.
Thank you very much, Maggie, for that announcement. And yes, count on us. We shall be part of that as well. The Rotary Club of Lubowa will also have our installation on the 23rd of May, and we shall share details on the different platforms. But just pencil in the date, 23rd of June, 23rd of June, 2020. All right? So, any more announcements?
Yes, President Conrad, this is Francis Chimera from Rotary Club of Ginger.
A very special welcome, Rotarian Francis.
Thank you, Connect President. Translation, which will be both virtual and live, which will be on the 11th of July.
11th July.
And the 11th July. And our chief guest will be PDG Ken Mugisha. So reminders will be always sent on the forums. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that announcement. Any more announcements?
Yes, President. Hello, President.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Ruth. Thank you so much, President. This is Ruth Kihumro from Rotary Club of Nakasero Central. Announcement is our club is going to be chartered on the 21st of June. We shall be stationed at Gold Coast, but it will be online. We shall share all the flyers on the different forums. Thank you so much. Kindly join us.
Thank you very much for that announcement. And yes, I think we need to dive into serious business if we're done with announcements. Are we done with announcements? Okay. Now, friends, I'm sure you all know that we have serious Ugandans as our panelists this evening. And there are two interesting people that we've hosted as the Rotary Club of Lubowa. And of course, the third person who is going to moderate this evening's session is our incoming Assistant Governor, Rotarian Harriet Obbo, who all of us know very well. She needs no introduction. And yes? And I'm going to request our very own Aida Kayongo Hajati, Rotarian Hajati Aida Kayongo, to introduce Rukh Shana. And of course, this should take you not more than 2 minutes. Over to you, Rotarian Aida. Rotarian Ida? Waiting for you.
With a focus on philanthropy.
Yes, Rotarian Ida, go ahead and introduce Rukh, Shana.
Thank you very much, my president, for the opportunity given me. I greet you all. Allow me to introduce our guest for the day. Our guest speaker today is none other than Shana Namuyimba.
Rukh, Shana, could you kindly switch on your video such that we can see who the person being introduced? Some of us have forgotten how you look like.
Noted.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Rotarian Ida, go ahead. Rotarian Ida, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, Rotarian Ida, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Rotarian Ida, could you kindly go ahead? We can hear you. Looks like we're losing or we've lost Rotarian Ida. Rotarian Ida, are you there? Okay. Since we can't get hold of Rotarian Ida, allow me to. Rotarian Ida, are you
Mr.
back?
President, can I come?
I'm trying to get back to you, but the network isn't that clear. Yeah? Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I was going ahead to introduce our guest speaker. And I've been communicating that she's a seasonal communication specialist with over corporate communication, media, and public stakeholder. She's a technical writer, and she manages events. Some of the brands she has been responsible for include MTN Uganda, East African Breweries, Vodafone, and she's currently managing communication and events and she's managing events for DFCU Bank since 2017. Shana has been having passion for communication development with focus on philanthropic and sustainability projects in under civil communications with at least 7 years experience in management and evaluation. She has a responsibility in programs and in areas of education, health, water, and sanitation. She holds a bachelor's degree in arts, honors communication, majoring literature and English language, and minor, with extensive training in her line of work, both in communication and media. She is a member of the Public Relations Association of Uganda, for girls, supporting the next generation of communication leaders. A celebrated journalist, is a 2-time winner of RTV Academy awarding and the Best English Anchor, 2 times of the Media Challenge Initiative of Rosemary Nakabirwa Award. Dear Rotarians, ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome our guest speaker today, Shana Namuyimba. Thank you very much. Hoping I'm still on air. Allow me members, you can join me to welcome our speaker for the day, Shana Namuyimba.
Thank you.
Hello? Yes, I'm done.
James, the co-host, we seem to have lost the president.
I'm trying to get to him. Let me try to get to him and get back to you.
Friends, thank you very much for that introduction, Rotarian Ida, but I'm going to request that you shift from that wetland and get to a raised area in Lubowa, such that we can be able to get you clearly next time. You need to work hard on that. So at this moment, friends, I'm going to hand you over to our AGE. I'm going to hand you over to our AGE Rotarian Harriet Bampera Obbo, who all of us know very well, to lead us into the next session, where we'll also get the introduction of Mr. Val Oketcho. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, friends, Rotary friends, family, and all our guests this evening. You're all very welcome. Mr. President, am I clear?
Yes, you're very clear.
Okay, great. Tonight, we have two panelists for the topic of this evening, which is the art of communication. Two great people, and in this area, Shana has been introduced, and I will now request that Val introduces himself. Val, over to you.
Okay. Good evening, dear Rotarians.
Good evening, Val. Please proceed.
Just a confirmation that you can hear me. AGE, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you, Val. Please proceed.
Confirm?
Confirmed.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Val Oketcho. Okay, perfect. I am consulate with over a decade's experience in corporate communications and public affairs, stakeholder management, PR, media industry, and media management. As manager for Viva Energy Uganda. Viva Energy Uganda is the distributor and marketer of Shell branded products in Uganda. The Shell brand has been in the country for 60 years. And previously, I've also held a similar position with MTN Uganda. Actually, at one point in time, I worked in the same department. It's good to meet here again, of course, and usual media run-ins. I've also worked with ESCOM Uganda in a similar capacity, and the agencies like Publics Africa. And on media, I've also worked with broadcast media such as Radio Sanyu and philanthropy as well. I take great passion in public engagement, responsibility, or investments, if you may, exciting, rethink, and having pleased to be here, deeply honored. I see lots of familiar faces on the call, and I'm only grateful that you can have this opportunity to interact virtually, possibly one day physically. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Val, for yourself. Friends, this evening we've got these two panelists with very rich CVs like you had, and we are actually going to engage with them on the topic of the art of communication. I will start off by those things we live with every day, every hour, every minute, every second of our lives, in all areas of our lives, whether they are personal, professional, business, and our voluntary service life. It's just like taking in oxygen, by the way. How well we communicate impacts greatly on how we achieve our objectives in all those areas of our lives. It is actually that I would like us to get into the subject matter right away, why communication is referred to as an art. And I will allow our panelists to come in now and take it on.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. I'd like to just ask our dear Rotarians present for your opinion before we start. Is communication an art or is it a science? I guess you could respond possibly by texting, sending a message in the chat room, So we can pick your views from there, and then we can guide as we go forward. Is communication an art, or is it a science? And of course, by the end of our interaction today, our fellowship, we should be able to know, distinguish why and how it is important for us to consider in either way. Yeah. I could start with you, Harriet. Is communication an art or a science? Okay.
I've had Nakato respond already. Nakato, can you tell us? I saw you typing in an art. Why? Why do you say communication is an art?
Okay, so I see a few responses here. Rotarian Margaret says it's an art. Rotarian Richard Kalunji says it's a science and an art, and they're probably passionate about that. Without wasting much time, communication has elements of an art and the science at the same time. It is an essential service, so to speak. I know that during this lockdown, some of our roles have been referred to as either essential or non-essential. This is definitely one. As regards to a science, we know that science lays down specific rules or formulas, if you may, for any experiment doing it. Strictly, you have the same results, okay, which will always happen and can be predicted almost with 100% certainty in advance. Whereas in any art, even though certain procedures and rules can be prescribed, depending on the user's availability or individuality and genius, the outcome is totally different from that of one person to another. Basically, as a science, if you consider communication as a science, it follows certain formulas or tools. And if it's an art, it mostly relies on those procedures, but also upon an individual's genius or talent. In communication, there are also definite grammatical rules to be followed, for example. But even if you follow these rules correctly, there's no guarantee for the expected results because there's so many other factors which influence the final outcome in addition to grammar rules. Now, only if all these other factors are taken care of while formulating your communication does your communication become really effective and produce the expected or desired results. What this means is that even in comms, there are certain rules that we follow. For example, sentence construction, for example, grammar. Not everyone can be proficient in that, you'll agree, and it's okay, in the various languages that are available. And the way or the outcome of one's communication definitely differs from one person to another. How Rukh Shana speaks, not the way that I speak. How she expresses herself on TV, not the way I express myself on radio, and so on and so forth. So to a great extent, communication is an art. It requires practice, first of all, for its optimum effectiveness. It involves preparation, crafting and creating messages or content, what's going to be broadcast on air, for example, or a speech that's going to be read. Takes a lot of preparation, make no mistake of it. And also the fact that as you're communicating, you need to be aware of your audience and the intent, and of course, so that you can come off as compelling. Professional communicators use various forms of words. They use tone, they use diction to change perceptions of people from negative to positive, to make a sale or to make a proposal or to influence behavior. You could also say that this ability is ingrained in a person. It's a talent. Some people can be born with it. Some people can pick it up along the way through routine practice. But all that, as you notice, is an art. Take an example of the president. When he attempts to translate words to various local languages in the middle of his presidential address, and you've noticed this during the lockdown, I'm sure he has an objective. He's not doing it for nothing. He wants to learn words we didn't know previously, like Oketcho and so on and so forth. So it takes a lot of skill to be able to pull that off and at the right time. So in arts, I'll just say that repeated practice makes a lot of difference in the quality of the outcome. especially in communication. Whereas in science, even if you're going to perform it only once, if you follow the rules correctly, the desired outcome can be guaranteed because there's certain formulas and expected outcomes.
If I could just get in at this point as well.
Yes, can hear you.
Well, I can hear you.
Okay. So to me, communication is more an art than a science, just to answer you.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, Val. Thank you for setting the ball rolling. And now,
yes,
Shana, over to you.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be part of this conversation, obviously. Thank you for having me here. If I could just build up a little bit on what Val has said, and he's leaned a lot more to the art. But in order for us to appreciate the art of communication, we must truly understand the science. Now, he's talked a little bit about what makes it a science, and science generally calls for understanding the process and the theory as it relates to communication, and using that knowledge to inform how you communicate to give yourself the best chance of a positive outcome. Now, if you do not understand the communication process, it doesn't matter how eloquent you are or what kind of skills you have, you will not have a positive outcome. Now, in order for you to understand the communication process, you must appreciate that there has to be a message, which is the information that you wish to convey. There has to be encoding has to happen, which means I, as a sender, needs to choose how to bring my message into a form that's appropriate for sending. And I have to pick a channel. That means how am I going to convey this message? And then, of course, at the other end, there's a recipient. And this recipient needs to decode this message, which is basically how they interpret the message that I have sent. Now, it doesn't always follow that just because I have sent out a message, I have communicated. Because if my intention is not what the recipient understands, then I have not communicated. Okay, so we must understand the process. And that process is the science part of it. If we do not understand that, then it's very difficult. We must also appreciate that as a sender of the communication and as a recipient, we both come to the communication process in a certain context. I come to the communication process with my past experiences, my knowledge, my feelings, my attitude, and all of this shapes my message. Similarly, the recipient comes to the communication space with all that, and that can affect whether or not they will get my point or not get my point. And that's what we actually call noise in the communication process. Now, if you do not appreciate that, it becomes very difficult for you to actually get into the art space, because art technically speaks to the communicator's use of communication-related concepts or the creative application of skills to achieve a desired end in a way that achieves a positive result. In short, the art part of communication is the best way of doing or saying something. It is the how. But in order for you to appreciate that, in order for you to get the how right, you need to understand the what. And that's really important. If we took an example of, if I wanted to rally people behind a cause for social good, like let's say setting up a community library, okay, in some part of the country, or any other project for social good, which is what you do in Rotary. How I choose to do this in an effort to achieve my goal is the art element of communication. Will I appeal to the heart or will I appeal to the mind? Should I go it alone or should I use my network to raise a cause-passionate army to be able to get my job done? Now that thought process and the skills needed is what speaks to the art aspect of communication. So it's a delicate balance. You have to constantly be aware of the science part of it in order for you to get the art part right.
Yeah, well spoken.
Great. Thank you.
So it's a balance of both.
Exactly. Val and Shana, you bring this to us, that it's actually a balance of both the art side and the science side. Now, with that understanding of what communication is, I'd like us to go to the workplace. Often communication is defined as a skill used for moving information and ideas efficiently and effectively within and among organizational units and with stakeholders. I would like us to know, I believe our viewers would like to know, what are those things they need to look out for to ensure that there is effective communication at their workplaces, or even actually, since we're Rotarians, even at our Rotary clubs? What are those things that we should be looking out for to ensure that we are effectively communicating in our workplaces and at our Rotary clubs?
Harriet, I think it effectively starts with clarity of your communication objective, yeah, as the person who's communicating, because that informs everything else that you do thereafter in terms of determining who exactly your target audience is, in terms of message development, in terms of channel of communication you're going to use, in terms of frequency, how often are you going to communicate. If we took the case of Rotary Club of Lubowa as an example, if your objective as a club is to give 30 plus professionals an opportunity to get involved in both local and international community projects, then from a communication perspective, you need to create, your objective would be to create a shared appreciation and understanding, not just of the community needs, but the impact of your activities. And for that, you would then need to tell your story in a way that's compelling enough to attract like-minded people to the club. That's in terms of the external communication, if you want to draw more people to your club, but also drive a lot more involvement and engagement of the club members internally, which is the internal communication. So as the person communicating, your communication objective has to be very clear. Now, once that's clear to you, yeah, then you think about your specific audience. While your club might have 100 plus members, it may not necessarily be important for you to communicate to all of them. The message will go to all of them, but you might need to think about targeting a core audience. And in that case, in terms of your specific audience, you need to think about what is it that motivates them. How can you tailor your communication to specifically reach that very targeted audience? And this is important, especially if you want to drive real change. If you know you have some people in the workplace, for example, or in your club who are influencers, then your message should be designed with those people in mind. So if you want to target their heartstrings, once they buy in, they are likely to influence the rest to fall in. So this is something you have to think about as you're thinking about how to make your communication effective. So you don't just do what I call carpet bombing in terms of communication. Of course, the other aspect would be clarity of your key message. Now, as a communicator, the message takeout should be very clear to you. If it is not clear to you as the person who's communicating, the likelihood that your audience is going to get it is minimal. What do you want your club members or your potential club members to remember, to feel, to do? What is the call to action? And what reason do they have to believe in what you're telling them? Okay? I think as a communicator, one of the things that you need to constantly think about, if in terms of effective communication, is you shouldn't be telling people that they can make a change in the community or grow their businesses. You need to demonstrate for them how they can, because then they're most likely to remember. Then thereafter, you have to think about what type of communication works best for your audience. Communication has obviously evolved in so many ways, and it's almost effortless to send and receive messages. It's fast, it's easy, it's convenient. So it's very easy to assume that it is simple, right? But the reality is communication is not simple. It's actually getting a lot more complex. So we have to be deliberate about the choices that we make, considering that they have pros and cons. And I'm sure Val will speak a little bit more to this. We're talking about verbal communication, non-verbal communication, written communication, and visual communication as the types of communication. Now you have to think about what is the most appropriate type of communication for me to use at what time for my target audience and to what effect. Now, you may have heard of this. I'm sure most people have heard of this, that according to Dr. Albert, is an author of Silent Messages. He conducted multiple research. And he says that 7% of any message is conveyed through verbal communication. 38% through certain vocal elements. And Val touched on this when he was talking about the skill. It's your tone, it's your pitch, it's your pace. It's basically how you speak. And 55% is through the non-verbal elements, the facial expressions, the gestures, the postures. So you will realize that you cannot just rely on one form of communication if you're going to be effective. And sometimes you will recall, or you may hear people say, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, which directly relates to how you make people feel. And communication is about how we make people feel, because it's about building and enhancing relationships. And of course, the other thing that's really critical as far as effective communication is concerned is listening. And that is probably the most important thing. Listening is obviously critical because it helps confirm whether your message has reached your target audience and whether it has been decoded or interpreted as per your intent. If what you intended is not what I understand, then you have not been effective at all as far as communication. So from my perspective, those are the things that you need to be cognizant of as you get into the communication space.
Thank you, Shana. Yes, Val.
That's right, Shana.
Can you?
I'll just touch on the part. Yeah, I'll just touch on the part of the different forms of communication. If some of you have studied MBAs, and you're probably familiar with Peter Drucker, he's the father of modern management. If you've been accustomed to using theories of his management, like MBO, managing by object, and also SMART measures, you know that one of the most important things he said is that and that speaks to the nonverbal communication, or the messaging that comes in the communication process. And that is also very important, like you said, Shana. For me, some of the things that you'd have to look out for to ensure that there's effective communication in your workplace or even in the club is a deep understanding of the members in it, a deep understanding of the stakeholders. Who are the leaders? Who are the influential people? In PR, I'm sure you, or Shana, you know that there's that falls under the element of stakeholder mapping. Who are the people we're communicating with and why? And how are they important to the affairs of our club? You map them according to their level of influence or power in the affairs of our workplace or for the club. And for the leadership team, how do you harness this information to suit the aspirations of the club or for the advancement of your activities? Once you have a core team that is able to move things, the messaging becomes even clear in a structured sort of club. You definitely have to have a plan in place. What do we communicate and how do we communicate it? We communicate by objectives, make no mistake. What is the desired or the intended outcome at the end of the day? Is it participation? Is it awareness? Is it behavioral change? That informs the tactics that shall be deployed. Could it be storytelling? How compelling can it be? Could it be quotes? Could it be drama? Setting out the purpose of your communication will also dictate the methods and the means of delivery. And of course, one other important aspect of effective communication is timing is very critical. If you miss an opportunity, then that opportunity is gone. And most likely it will not come back, or you'll be playing catch up, which is not good. Obviously, there should be official or established channels of communication, both formal and informal. I notice many people now adopt to WhatsApp groups that gets the message around even quicker than an email these days. And the WhatsApp message, many people will tell you, will get the required attention than an email. And that's a strange thing lately, but that is what is happening. Also, because communication is a two-way process, there has to be an established channel for the club to interact and provide feedback, or to seek redress, or for whistleblowing, or just either a channel back to the leadership team or with all the members of the club. One other area that communicators make a mistake of skipping out on is evaluating the process. It's very essential. It's not enough for you to always speak out and channel communication one way. There has to be a method for you to sort of evaluate whether you are actually communicating, what you're communicating has been internalized and is moving. Non-verbal communication, once again, says a lot about, your messaging. It could be body language, could be undertones. You master the skill by being observant. Somebody once said that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. for you to listen twice as much as you speak. And so the ability for the team to be able to read the emotions and nonverbal communication of another person or the members of the club will definitely increase the understanding and elevate some of these relationships. Some could refer to it as emotional intelligence as well. Those are key areas that we need to focus on for effective communication in the club.
Okay, great. Thank you, Val and Rukh, for taking us through that session for our communication internally at our workplaces and at our clubs. And I would like us now to focus on our external stakeholders. These would include our clients, our partners, sponsors, communities we work with. How can we ensure that we are effectively also communicating with them now that we've tackled the internal communication? I would like us to go through and see, are we going to use the same methods when we are dealing with our external stakeholders, well knowing that communication opens the floodgates for influencing others' thoughts, perceptions, feelings, belief, and attitude towards either a situation, a product, or a service. Can you please take us through that bit of communicating with the external stakeholders?
For all intents and purposes, the process doesn't change. The guidelines do not change. The principles are pretty much the same. The only difference is one is an internal audience and the other is an external audience, or it's the external stakeholders. But the communication principles definitely have to be the same. I think what's really, really important is that if your communication objective is clear to you. So for example, if you're communicating to raise awareness, or if you're communicating to fundraise, or if you're communicating to change behavior, and your messages have been adequately crafted based on that objective, then you can come back at the end of the communication process to see if you were able to achieve your objective. Now, if you did not, if for example, you wanted to raise more awareness on what you do as a club, and then after a particular campaign period, you maybe you do some research to find out, does the community know what we're about? In your case, for example, the community in Lubowa, do they know what we're about? Do they know what we do? And they generally don't, then that will tell you that your communication has not been effective, in which case you'd have to go back and evaluate and see where did we actually go wrong. But generally speaking, the process is the same. I don't know if Val has,
great.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, that's right. Effective communication is that has reached its intended target audience. It is that has impacted its audience. It is that has achieved the intended objective, like Rukh said, for that particular audience. It definitely requires measurement or evaluation at some point. The communication process basically for your external stakeholders begins with setting goals. What do you want to communicate to that stakeholder? Is it behavioral change? Is it a fundraising initiative? Is it a CSR initiative? And then you determine the desired outcomes, not simply outputs, the outcomes. Behavioral change could be just one of them. And then that effectiveness in communication can then be measured against quantifiable objectives and the resulting performance. If it hasn't worked out as planned, it is okay to always go back to the drawing board and redesign the communication process. That feedback that you acquire can definitely be to improve that process.
Okay.
Measurement could be anything. It could be surveys, it could be research, to measure their perception or awareness or relationships. Yeah. And then again, that content can be adjusted accordingly. Know the person you're communicating to, communicate using the right format and at the right time. And sometimes they say that less is actually more. When you over bombard people with information, it breaks down the process.
Okay, great. Val, you actually take us into our next session of discussion. Communication does break down sometimes. And even musicians like Led Zeppelin, an English rock band, has even written a song, Communication Breakdown. In situations whereby communication breaks down, and this happens quite often in our environments, in our circles. How do we fix it?
Okay. The first question would be, why does communication break down? The first thing, of course, that comes to mind is messages or communication can be lost in translation. Many times not because of a language barrier, but how the message is interpreted. Verbal and non-verbal communication can be responsible for that. For example, it is rumored that there was a grave mistake that was occasioned by a misinterpretation of the Luganda dialect in Tulusoga. And historians, you might know. Kabaka Mwanga of Buganda at one point in time, I think in 1885, communicated.
Well, why was Uganda?
It will drive the point home. And definitely no offense, because this is what has been documented. Bishop Hannington was coming in from England on his way to Buganda, but he was intercepted in Busoga. So a story is told of how Kabaka Mwanga ordered the bishop's captors to hold him and let him go. Omusajja bamute agende. The perceived message that they say by the subjects was Omusajja bamute. Bishop Hannington his life in that way. You can quote me or not quote me, but that is the story from our history that is said. So sometimes messages can be lost in translation. It might not be intended, but it's always good at the end of the day to go back and evaluate. Another reason why there's communication breakdown is when there's an information overload. You're bombarded with messages from multiple sources. Social media sometimes is responsible for this, but also when we have too much information, it's quite difficult to process, okay? The simplicity in communicating is lost. There are times when there's pressure to communicate. There's no time to communicate properly or craft messages appropriately to target certain groups. And so you kind of think that one rule, one size or one rule of messaging sort of fits everyone. There's also an issue of low attention span. I think it was a study by Microsoft. The average human attention span has decreased from 12 seconds to 8. If you don't make your point, or if you don't attract interest within those initial seconds when you start to speak or to communicate, chances are you can lose out on your target audience. We've been in meetings, really important meetings, where people zone out and switch to messaging on WhatsApp, and yet important deliberations are taking place. So it is key that that area of communication breakdown also is attended to. If you have something important to say, they say, make it in the morning, because we have that ability to concentrate and focus more when we are fresh. So the outcome of communication breakdown, can be even for the club. It could be tension when people don't understand certain communication. It leads to disorganization. It could lead to gossip, grapevine. It could also be a loss of motivation. So quickly, to fix this, it's important to take ownership or responsibility of the message. Somebody has to come out and say that this message is not working, this communication has not worked. Of course, that will be based on certain factors like the feedback gathered or objectives not met, and then lead the way in resolving those issues that are bound or correcting the misconceptions or the breakdown in the process. It is important, again, to rectify it in time. It's also, for us to avoid a breakdown in communication, it's important for you to be upfront about the expectations or the goals. Clarity on key messages and objectives or the desired outcome of your communications should be well known and well communicated. Otherwise, you'll be met with unfulfilled tasks, deadlines that have not been met, unclear objectives, and confusion about roles most times. To resolve communication breakdown as a club, focus on unity. Communication breakdowns will divide and destroy teams or clubs. People huddle into groups. One group has understood this language, or the other group has internalized a different sort of communication. And so by getting everybody back to the drawing board, or in the same room, on the same page, to refocus on the same results or desired outcomes will have a correcting effect on many problems. Communicating wisely as well. Or you can leverage on technology as well. Email sometimes do not cut it alone. So with the multiplicity of communication channels that are now available, you could opt for a broader appeal and penetration of messaging. It could be face-to-face meetings, it could be multimedia, short videos, all the different messaging platforms that are available. And lastly, for me, it would be avoid over-communication. Be wary of communicating too much and so much within a short period of time.
Okay, great. And Shana, well, what's your take on that?
Well, I pretty much agree with everything that Val has said, but I'd just like to take us back to the science of communication. If you are constantly aware and alive to the fact that your audience comes to the communication experience with a lot going on, then you should be wary of the fact that there's a likelihood that it could break down. Yeah. So what you're supposed to do as a communicator is to think of all the possible ways that your one single message could be interpreted. And it's very tedious, but it's something that you have to learn over and over and over again. And then you make sure that the message you send out is as close as possible to your intended message. If I could just quickly share an experience. In my freshman year in early 2000, I had an experience in the office of the Dean of Students. I had gone for, I don't know what, I think to change the way my name had been written at the university. That's Makere. And I get into his office and he tells me, lock the door. And I froze because I'm thinking, what is going on? You know, you've had all these stories about what happens at university, and the gentleman tells you, please lock the door. Now, if he had read my body language, he would have realized that I hadn't figured out which door he was talking about. It turns out there were 2 doors in his office, okay? Now, I saw only one door. In my mind, I'm thinking, why does he want me to lock my door? Oh my God, I'm going to get abused. That's actually what I was thinking about at that point in time. But it took him a while to figure it out. I actually had to say, no, with all due respect, sir, I am not going to close the door. And then he realized, oh my God, she actually was thinking that I'm telling her to close the door so, you know, she bang goes on. Now, there was a total breakdown in communication, and he was such a nice dean of students, you know, so he had to explain and he had to apologize. But that just goes to show you that you cannot assume that someone is going to understand what it is that you're trying to say. So the important thing is to just step back, assess why there was a breakdown in the first place, and then fix it. And it's actually okay to acknowledge that you've made a mistake and then go on and fix it. It helps in rebuilding trust. Many times there's a breakdown in communication, and that's because trust has probably been broken or is just about to get broken. And like I said earlier, communication is really about enhancing relationships. And that's why it's important that you have to do whatever it is that it takes to make sure that you get it right.
Thank you, Shana, for even sharing a personal experience and actually getting curious. Val, do you have any personal experience to share?
Communication breakdowns. I think I just shared one of the Kabaka.
Oh, no, personal, yours. Leave alone the Basoga and the Kabaka.
Personal, well, those happen a lot. Quite many, not one quickly comes to mind, but on my experience on radio, we've had lots of instances where we, for example, run a quiz over the air with a reward and people just don't get it right, either because the questions are understood or some other reason. So those instances have been quite many, at least on air. And I'm sure, Rukh, you might also have experienced the same on TV.
Yeah, certainly have. Harriet, just one thing I forgot to mention. The timing of a message can also cause the breakdown in communication. Just a very quick example that I can give right now is a media house that decided to, as part of its entertainment-ish, don T-shirts that said "All Lives Matter," and it just caused such a furor on Twitter and on social media. And I am almost certain that the intention was not as it was perceived on social media. But the timing of that message, unfortunately, was not good, because right now we are thinking Black Lives Matter, and you know, anything contrary to that or using all lives matter regardless of the context caused a bit of a problem. So sometimes if you do not provide the appropriate context of your communication, you are likely to create a breakdown in communication. I just thought I should use that as an example. So context is important.
Mhm.
Timing is also important.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Val and Shana, for really taking us through this. And I would like us in a few minutes to now get back to the individual.
Mhm.
How does one master the art of communication as an individual? As Harriet, as Conrad, as Shana, as Val, how does one master the art of communication?
Okay. Learning, really, and being open to it. Training and practice. Many of us could possibly be past school days, school-going days, or possibly you are. But there are various opportunities for one to take short courses and trainings on public speaking. There are lots of webinars that are free on communication. So it's also important that one who is interested in becoming a better communicator seeks mentorship opportunities. You probably know a renowned communicator or a coach who's good at what they do. Wouldn't be bad to engage them. There are many ways, on email and so on. You can definitely get around to almost anyone you want to in our setting. I've heard of also a Toastmaster club. They have a few clubs in Kampala. They encourage lots of public speaking. They train you to do so. And they normally meet, I think, occasionally, I think once a week or once a month. I'm not too sure the frequency, but they're great opportunities for you to interact. Another way is to seek speaking opportunities. Start with the Rotary Club of Lubowa, with your peers, people who understand you, who know you, who will definitely have your back. You could also volunteer to do that free of charge until you're confident enough to demand a speaking fee. Practice generally makes perfect. Socializing definitely makes it happen. The Rotary is a very perfect opportunity for you to do that. Engage more, connect more with social groups or people that you know well. If you do not have an outgoing personality, or if you're more of an introvert, you can purposely develop one that you use when it's applicable. I know through media there are very many introverts, especially on radio, that make great conversationalists. Behind the microphone or on the screen, when they're really comfortable in their skin or in the surroundings of the people around them. So it definitely is something that you can learn to do. To successfully communicate, you need to really plan. Make no mistake about it, all of us in media plan. At the start of your day, before you go on air, you definitely have to prepare for that moment. An end-to-end planning process is definitely necessary to ensure that it is success. Success can refer to completion of that or achieving a desired outcome or other milestones. Another thing about becoming a better communicator is have a goal or an end in mind. The way you deliver your message can make or break the outcome. Confidence is key. Communication, of course, boil down to the one thing, what is the goal here? I follow Barack Obama's speech, right? Your communication will be more effective why you want to communicate to someone, because that particular thing is, then you can be able to communicate successfully. Communication becomes messy and ineffective when you, the person who's writing, or you, the person who's speaking, does not have a clear sense of what you want the end result to be. And that is really important if you're to learn to be a better communicator.
Wow.
If I could just.
This is very. Yes, Shana, you want to say something before we wind up, before we open up for the Q&A?
Yes, just a few issues that Val may have left out is when you think about some of the great leaders or the great leaders or the great communicators, they're motivated, they're articulate, they can comfortably speak in front of all audiences, and they're exceptionally passionate and trustworthy. So for you to be a good communicator or to move from novice to mastery, you need to be you. You need to be authentic. Authenticity is everything for a communicator. It requires that you're honest and that you're sincere, and you have to find your own voice. Many times, especially in the corporate space, we use a lot of what we call corporate speak, and we sound like people that we're not, but people will tell when you're speaking from the heart. So you need to let who you are and where you come from and what you value come through in your communication. People don't care how eloquent you are if they can't feel the person behind the voice. And forget that sometimes they may not necessarily like the person, but they have to feel that there's a person behind the voice. And of course, you have to be articulate. You have to speak clearly. You have to speak concisely. You have to speak effectively. And you have to be able to express your thoughts with ease. And these are things that you can actually learn. Some people, it comes to them naturally, but you can actually learn. Then you have to be inspiring. Now, in order for you to be inspiring, you have to think dialogue. Now, sometimes we speak without necessarily, our thoughts and our speech are not necessarily connected, but they have to be connected. And you have to be able to think in the language that you're speaking. And you also have to think in terms of stories. The best leaders are engaged and they are conversational. They are personal, they get personal, they ask questions, and they encourage honest discourse, and they speak candidly. That's what makes them inspiring. You have to be very clear. You have to avoid complicated language. Sometimes it's very easy for us to think that if we use very, very big words, or if we make the thesaurus our friend, then we are really great communicators. That's not necessarily true. You have to keep your language simple and clear, because your intention is for the other person to understand, not for you to show off. And the faster someone can understand what you're saying, the faster you'll actually start seeing results from a communication perspective. But like I said, the most important thing, you always have to listen. If you want to be a master at communication, you have to be a good listener. When you listen well, you gain a clear understanding of another person's perspective and their knowledge. Listening fosters trust, it fosters respect, and it fosters openness. And it helps build relations.
Sure.
Wow, what a nice way to wind up this session. Very rich content out there that you guys have shared with us, and we are really very, very appreciative. I'm sure the audience is very appreciative, and as I know now, a number of them have comments, have questions, and I'd like now to open up to the Q&A and request James to kindly mention what's in the chat room right now. James?
Yes, thank you, moderator, Rotarian Harriet. Richard asks, what is their comment on the Tonsembele campaign? Do they think it can achieve its intended goal without creating stigma? Do they think it has got people becoming proactive about preventing COVID? Then Rotarian Joshua asks, how best can a PR campaign reach out effectively to the receiver? Then there's Rotarian Chumu asks, the work environment is comprised of Generation X, Z, and millennials, and their communication styles are different. How can you achieve effective communication to the different generations in an organization? Those are the three questions so far. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And in a few minutes, Val and Shana, can you take those three on?
Okay, I'll start with the question in respect to if you have different generations working in the organization, how do you communicate to them in a way that's effective, considering that they are totally different types of people? I think it's pretty simple. What you have to do is, first of all, if you know that your audience is diverse, you have the millennials who really don't have time to read very long emails and long messages, and then you have the people who are more detail-oriented. Then what you have to do is that you just have to have different channels of communication, okay? You cannot use one single channel of communication to reach all these individuals. Something that Val mentioned earlier, which I also found a little bit surprising, but not entirely surprising, is the fact that WhatsApp is a very popular form of communication in the workplace right now. That's because, one, it's instant, but it also doesn't allow you to write a lot of lengthy messages, okay? So as a communication person in the workplace or in the organization, you have to devise the different channels that are appropriate for the different your different audiences, but also determine what kind of messages will call for the quick instant messaging, whether it's through WhatsApp or through Yammer or through any of those internal Microsoft Teams chats or blah, blah, blah. And then decide what kind of messages are you going to put on email? What kind of communication are you going to pass on in a town hall meeting, for example? But you can only do that if you have a plan. If you have a plan, if you know that this is my communication objective, these are my key messages, and this is the most appropriate channel and based on the audiences that I have. So it's not like you use only one channel of communication, they have to be multiple in order for you to reach your different target audiences. But like I also said, you do not necessarily have to effectively reach everyone at once. Pick out the influencers. If you know there are people in your organization that influence, target those ones and get them then to do the trickle-down effect for your communication. While everyone will see the messaging, in terms of it being effective, get your influencers then to influence the other guys. I think that's the simplest way I can put it.
Yeah, I also agree. I also agree with Shana. You need to know your club, your team well. One thing that has worked for us is to have a core team of influencers, even at the office, who can sort of channel these messages onwards to different groups in the office. Get to know who, for example, represents the millennials and who represents the other generations, and tailor the messages accordingly to them. Use a multiplicity of channels because each of them has their own qualities or properties. WhatsApp is only limited by space. But there are other formats you can use, for example, in WhatsApp, for example, videos, voice recordings, and the like. Emails are more formal, of course. So a mix of the different channels of communication can work well. Less is also more, like Lushana, each particular group would be good. If you use a poster for a certain group or a video for a certain group or a long email for another group, it would be definitely suitable for each of them to internalize the messages accordingly.
Okay, great. Val, can you have a comment about the Tonsembera campaign question?
I would need to understand what the objectives of the Tonsembera campaign actually were, but on face value, I would assume the ministry, with all good intentions, is promoting one particular aspect of slowing down the spread of the coronavirus, which is social distancing. Kudos to them for attempting to localize it to appeal to a broader audience. I'm not too sure of the uptake, but possibly, dear Rotarians, you can share with me whether that particular campaign has appealed to you or it speaks to you. But on hearing it the first time, of course, I understand that they intend to encourage social distancing. That may have a stigmatizing effect, especially in the light of the development of the truck drivers now that are being seen as the main carriers of the coronavirus. It becomes even more apparent that people need to social distance from them, but that has also created a bit of stigmatization for these drivers. I know because at Vivo Energy, our truck drivers basically transport the fuel into the country at the various points of the country as well. And so they have given us this feedback that this is what is on the ground. People are stigmatizing them, and it's not a really good thing to do. It definitely overrides the good intentions of the campaign.
But Harriet, what that also says to you is that from a communication objective perspective, you need to think both short-term and long-term. So while in the short term, it seems like an amazing campaign, and it is an amazing campaign as far as achieving the objective of social distancing, what are the long-term ramifications of this campaign? Now, as a communicator, you need to think beyond just the now and think about the future as well.
Right. Oh, thanks, Shana and Val. There was a question to do with the PR campaign. Have you tackled that? Or would you want to say something about it?
Okay.
James, can you pose that question again, please? Pose the question again to do with the PR campaign as we wind up.
Thank you, Rotary and Harriet. Rotarian Joshua asked, how best can a PR campaign reach out effectively to the
For a PR campaign to be effective, one, context is key. Okay. A PR campaign should have context. It should be planned really wisely. And that plan is informed by undertaking appropriate research for that particular campaign. Who do you intend to target? And what is your key message? What are the accompanying messages? And how are you going to represent these so they're appealing to the intended audience? What are the objectives of your PR campaign? And have you carefully segmented your intended publics who will receive this message? Have you meticulously crafted these messages for them? Another important part of the process is a strategy. Strategy usually becomes before the tactics. How are you going to penetrate or roll out this campaign? And what tactics are you going to use? Are you going to use social media? Are you going to use the other various channels? A good PR campaign has deadlines. It also has a key element of managing resources appropriately. Otherwise, you can go into a whole wasteful campaign, and when you do not see the results, it can appear as something that you are taking a lot of time on and is not returning the objectives that you required. It's also good for a PR campaign to evaluate on an ongoing basis and according to the objectives that you set out to achieve in the first place. In brief.
Okay, great. And in our discussion, as you're answering the questions, you talked about communication among the generations, cross-cutting, and during this lockdown period, there's plenty of things that we have learned. We could be in the sitting room and you're all talking, but suddenly the children begin coding, they begin communicating, and you're at a loss. Their generation, and they have their way of communicating. I would want us to quickly, in about a minute or two, because we cannot leave this topic of talking about the art of communication without bringing in the aspects of a family level, and especially during this COVID time when we have had to stay together for for this long. Most families haven't. What's your take on that communication when those millennials are now communicating and coding and all that? How do we get how do we get to manage this?
I'm not sure I understand what coding means, but if I were to hazard a guess, obviously I'm not a millennial, but if I were to hazard a guess, the only reason young people would code is because they don't want you to get it. So why would you even want to understand what they're saying? I think the important thing is, for the young people, for the adults or whatever it is, to make sure that the young people do not get lost in the sense that they're still able to develop the appropriate communication skills that they will need when they eventually come to the workplace or when they have to socialize with other people that are not necessarily their age, because it's very easy to get lost in your shorthand when you're typing or you're coding like you said, and this is very easy. You can see this when you speak to some young people. You're thinking, what are you saying? What are you talking about? And they can't actually express themselves. So as an adult, I think the more important thing is not to try and understand what they're saying, because the intention is so you do not understand the akabozi. It's just so that when you communicate to them, it's clear to them, but you also encourage them that when they're in the family setting, when they're in a setting where there is more than one person that's like them, it's only good manners and good practice to communicate clearly and articulately. If they do not want you to understand what they're saying, then they need to excuse themselves. Otherwise, it's very easy to carry that behavior into a public space, which is not good.
Great.
That's right.
Thanks for answering that spot on. And James, is there anything really, something that we cannot leave out in the chat room that we need to answer to before we wind up?
Thank you.
James?
Yes, Rotarian. I would like just to, there's one which has just come in and I thought it is very good to be put across. Yeah? It is from Rotarian. Okay. It is from Rotarian Flavia. It says, effective communication should be, an effective communicator should be a good listener. Whereas communication can be learned, listening is also determined by the attitude, behavior, and personality. How best can you support a leader who is very good at communication but does not listen that much?
Over to you, Val and Shana. We live with them the other day.
I think the only way to prove that is by doing. If a leader is a good communicator but does not do much of listening, then let somebody else do the listening, and let somebody else code that or feed that information to the good communicator. It's part of being a team. Each of us have certain strengths that we can bank on to perform our roles. And as a leader, I'm sure he has people he works with to help him perform his roles in the club. So if a leader is not able to, is a good communicator, but not able to employ that tactic of listening, or being a good listener, let somebody else do it, in my opinion, and feed into the narrative that will support the communicative process by the leader.
Okay, great. Shana, any comment on that?
I think for me, it's about appreciating that you need to be deliberate about picking up certain skills. If you realize that you are not being effective because you do not listen, then you have to go out of your way to learn how to listen. And there are different types of listening. I mean, there's empathic listening, as in when you genuinely listen because you are interested. And sometimes you can tell when someone is listening just because they want to, get the conversation going and out of the way. But you have to learn these skills. You have to learn how to listen critically. You have to learn how to listen appreciatively, okay? But it all starts with understanding why it's important for you to listen. If you do not appreciate that, it doesn't matter whether people take notes for you and tell you, you just will not listen. And sometimes, by the way, it takes people giving us feedback, people that we trust, people that we look up to. If they give us feedback, chances are we'll figure that, you know what, that's something we need to fix. But I think for me, the key takeout is if you have a leader who doesn't listen, find someone who he listens to, because there's always that one person that you hold in high regard, and let that person be the one that actually gives him the constructive feedback. Demonstrate to the leader what happens when you do not listen, and then show them the likely positive impact when you effectively listen to people. That will help. Otherwise, but it's a process. It's a very, very long process, but it's not impossible. You have to be deliberate about it, and you have to want to learn.
Great. Well, very nice content this evening. I feel like we should go on and on, but time is not on our side. And I would request to start off with Shana, any parting shots? Anything you want to say before we leave?
Yes, very quickly, I think for me, the key takeouts is life is a series of communication. We communicate both inadvertently and advertently, and it's imperative that we actually get it right. Simply getting it right simply means that we achieve the intended objective, which may be to inform, get information, educate, be educated, or even influence change. But also effective communication begins with the realization that we all view the world through a different prism, and using this understanding to guide how we communicate is the start of our journey to become masters at communication. And then thirdly, someone said that the art of communication is the language of leadership. And great leaders are authentic, they're inspiring, and they listen. They listen to both what is said, but more important, they listen to what is not said. And I think that's really, really, really important. And then interpersonal, business, professional communication interactions are complex, simply because they're really about building and managing relations. And finally, for me, when you think about, for example, the 4-way test of the things that we think, the things that we say or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? At the heart of that is effective communication. So we do not have any other option but to become effective communicators as Rotarians, but also people in places of leadership.
Great. Thanks for those words of wisdom, Val, the man from the East.
Rukshana, you rightly said the art of communication is the language of leadership. At several points in our lives, we are leaders. You're a leader of a home. You have people you look after, people that look up to you. You're in charge of teams at work. You're in charge of teams at the club. And therefore, make no mistake about it, communication is that one tool that will help you or get you to do things that have an intended purpose for the general good of the club. So harness its potential, rightly so. For those that want to really learn how to communicate, it is really possible if you're deliberate about it. It is something that you can achieve. We discussed how communication can be an art and a science, rightly so, but it can also be something besides being a talent or something that's ingrained in you. It is something that you can pick up as an individual and perfect those skills for a desired outcome. Communication, I'll close by saying, is a very powerful tool. It can lead to it's the life of the club. It can lead to its success. It can also work against it. So harness its power and use that power well for the better of the club.
Okay. Great, thank you, Shana. Thank you, Val. It's been a pleasure actually moderating this discussion this evening. You've been great panelists, and I wish we had 2 hours. But thank you so much. I will now hand over to Mr. President Conrad Kizito. Over to you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Mr. President? James, can you find our president? The mic is back to him.
He was saying that Rotarian Ida stays in a wetland. I think he moved down there. I'm trying to get to him.
You went to rescue Rotarian Ida. As you look for him, James.
Yes,
James?
Harriet, yes.
As you get hold of him.
Yes.
To wind up fellowship. Do we have him now?
That he's still trying to find network, but he's on.
Okay, good. As he finds network and as he comes on to take over, I think we okay. I have kind of heard his voice.
Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you, Conrad. President Conrad? James, are we able to get hold of the president?
He's still struggling to get his network right.
Okay, great. As he struggles to get that right, there was an interesting question in the chat room, which I've just seen now, and not surprising from who it's coming from, Dr. Richard Chirumira. Kalunji. Dr. Richard wanted to take us into a very long topic, but I think as we wait for the president to come, I was talking about communication in relationships and marriages. Val, do you want to say something as we wait for the president to come in line with that?
Why me?
You're the married one.
What is the question exactly?
Okay, let me actually go there and read it directly. Where's Richard? James, do you have the question there quickly? If not, let me scroll and
it says,
look it up.
Could you speak to communication breakdown at relationship level, marriages and all? Communication breakdown in relationships and marriage. Val.
Wow.
Communication breakdown in marriages. Okay. I assume we're addressing lots of marriages here, but I think if there's a breakdown in communication, possibly you and your spouse are no longer speaking, I think one of the questions you should be asking yourself is, what is your purpose? Are you there to feel empowered, to get respect, to let the other person know that you're angry? People are familiar with silent treatment. Is that a solution to really get you both to start talking and bridge that gap? Once there's no mistake about it, if there's a communication breakdown, it takes time to, of course, resolve. And once you realize that you're ready to talk, it's important for you to bridge that gap by one, being respectful. People love to be respected. People love to feel that they're important. And so that is the one way that can win you over a person. You need to be ready basically to talk and interact. Establish those rules of engagement in advance, have a dinner, purpose to basically resolve the communication breakdown or whatever it is that caused the breakdown. That should be the number one goal. It's one of those things that, make no mistake about it, you cannot wish a problem away. It has to be resolved through communicating. And once you open up a channel to communicate, then that will be the beginning of the resolution of breakdown in communication in relationships. That is just an overview of what I would think.
Okay. Great. Shana?
I believe if the parties in the relationship or in the marriage were deliberate about listening to what is said, but most importantly, what is not said, then some communication breakdown would be avoided. Many times, by the time you get to the point of not talking to each other, a lot has happened. It can be something as simple as my partner or my spouse asking me, how are you? And I say, I'm fine. Now, if I'm normally the chatty type of person, and I'm just giving you one-worded answers, if you pay attention, if you're a good listener, you will pick this, you'll pick the vibe. You'll actually tell that there's something. Yes, you'll pick the signals and you'll tell there's something that's not right with this person. But you must, first of all, understand your person. You have to understand your person. You need to take the time to know your person. That's the only way you can actually pick up on the signals. And then, of course, there are certain things that you will never get to the bottom of by asking direct questions. So you have to learn how to ask questions without necessarily asking questions. I don't even know if that makes sense. But you have to learn how to figure out how to get information without necessarily being direct with your questions. And that's a whole course unit on its own, especially if you're dealing with a female race, because women and men are generally different. They're generally different, I'll say I'm fine, but you have to read my body language. You just read everything. Actually, for women, it's more the non-verbal than the verbal. And men need to develop this skill set. But it also helps in the workplace, generally, by the way. But I shall not get into those matters.
All right.
Sure. Yeah. I know we can take like a month debating this, but you've given us very interesting overviews on that subtopic raised by Dr. Kalunji. And for now, let's look for the president. Mr. President, are you back?
Yes.
Over to you. While you were away, we deliberated. We had the interesting topics, great words of wisdom from Rukh, Shana and Val, and we were like, we wished we could just go and camp and have some time, have a campfire somewhere and talk for 6 hours.
Yes, I'm arranging that, and very soon we shall be letting you know on which venue we'll have zeroed on, but no worries, that will definitely happen. Thank you very, very much, AGE Harriet. Yes, after COVID. Thank you very much, AGE Harriet. Thank you very much, Rukh, Shana. Thank you very much, Val Oketcho. Val, you did not tell our Rotarians on here that you still MC as a side business. That should be able to sell you very well.
I still do. Some of the perks of being a communicator is that you get to have such opportunities. And like I mentioned earlier, I encouraged our dear Rotarians who would like to also pick up on the communication skills that in one way or another, it's also an area of income generating.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, friends. I'm going to ask one Rotarian Rona Kamukama to, of course, it's ambushing, but yes, Rotarian Rona, you'll pass a vote of thanks to Mr. Val Oketcho, future Rotarian, and our very own Rotarian Joshua Semakula Katamba will also pass a vote of thanks to Miss Rukh Shana, and that will also be followed by very nice cyber hugs. Please, Rotarian Rona.
Thank you, President, for giving me the opportunity to pass a vote of thanks for our very own future Rotarian Val. He gave us very insightful tidbits on communication. There are things actually I used to take for granted, but as he talked about them, they came to he made them live. So thank you very much, future Rotarian Val, for sparing your time to share with us. And it's good that we have known you are
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
An MC in events. You'll truly, truly make our day one day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rotarian Rona. To Val and Rukh Shana, Rotarian Rona doubles as our CEO. That is, she's the chief executive of our club, RC Lubowa, and I'd like to thank her for that vote of thanks. What about the cyber hug? You forgot about it?
I've given him 2 cyber hugs.
All right, thank you very much. Rotarian Joshua Semakula is our PR director at the Rotary Club of Lubowa, and he's been the brain behind this meeting. He set it up, he did the flyer, and I'd like to thank him, and that's why I suggested that he gives a vote of thanks to Rukh Shana and then 4 cyber hugs. Go ahead, PR.
President, thank you. I think it was more your effort. First, I would like to thank our AGE incoming. Rotarian Harriet, thank you for the great work.
Joshua, I asked you to give a vote of thanks to Rukh Shana.
You have to start from somewhere, then you arrive. I think that's part of what I had or learned from Rukh Shana.
Okay.
And President, I have something to carry from Rukh Shana to you, to listen.
Okay. Okay.
Rukh Shana, thank you so much for your insight into everything. Goodness, I've quite enjoyed, and I know there's a big book on communication, but you suddenly have made it much clearer. I was looking through the profile of those who have attended, then I saw Rotarian Fred Mustard. When I looked at his picture, I saw a lady. To me, I sort of understood it was.
Joshua, you're out of order. Joshua, you're out of order.
Forgive me, sir. Forgive me. But Rukh Shana, thank you so much. I carry something from you. The art of listening, I think, is what takes us on, and we will ensure that we rotate around that. If we are going to be better leaders, as it were. Val, thank you. I used to enjoy you on Sanyo FM so much, and it's a pity they had to take you away, but I can understand. This is how the world evolves. Let's see how it goes on from now on. And thank you so much for your presentation. It's very eloquent indeed. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Rotarian Joshua and Masade, to pass a vote of thanks to.
One hug is not enough. I'm giving her another one.
Okay, thank you. Rotarian Past Assistant Governor Fred Masade, kindly give a vote of thanks to our AGE, Harriet Obbo.
Thank you, President. First of all, I know the votes of thanks have been passed already, but Rukh, Shana and Val have done an amazing job. I feel very proud of it. Thank you. And first of all, before I get to Harriet, to Joshua, the image that you see is deliberate. You get conversation started better with a good-looking person than with my very outdated mug. So it's deliberate. Harriet, thank you for doing an amazing job regulating this. It's part of the art of communication to be able to moderate this kind of conversation and to get everything heard and everybody's point heard. Is you are quiet, these were the two guys talking, but you are also exhibiting a fantastic part of the art of communication. Thank you very much. I'm just delighted to be here. On behalf of the lady who appears in the picture, she's running a fellowship on the other side. But
thank you very, very much, Past Assistant Governor Fred Masade, for that vote of thanks. And at this moment in time, I'm going to request Rotarian James Nusu, who has doubled as a sergeant, to give us the statistics. But before that, allow me to thank all the connecting presidents that have joined us, all the district, past and present district officials. Of course, not forgetting our very own district governor nominee designate, Rotarian Peace Taremwa, Major Donor. Thank you very much for having taken time off to join us this evening. And over to you, Rotarian James.
President.
Yes.
President, I was introducing a guest. This is PP David. I was introducing a guest who enjoyed the fellowship. It's called Mvule Edmond. She enjoyed it because Harriet is the husband. He is the husband of Harriet. Like that? Yeah. Actually, he's the wife of Harriet.
Okay. So Harriet is the husband.
He has really enjoyed the fellowship.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, David, for that introduction, and Harriet for not having introduced somebody very close to you. We'll find you. All right, Sergeant.
President, by your leave.
Sergeant.
President, by your leave.
Yes.
Just to remind people, since we're discussing communication today, there is public image training this Saturday.
Yes. Yes.
There's a flyer going around, so as many people as can, please. It won't be as good as Rukh, Shana and Val speaking, but we shall try.
All right, thank you very much, Past Assistant Governor Fred. I will ask, in fact, Rotarian Joshua has already penciled that in, as it's a must attend. I'll also try and join in. Rotarian James Nusu.
Yes, thank you, President. I would like to make an observation throughout the fellowship that our presenters and the moderator did not take time off to sip on that famous cup. So we would like to thank them for that. Otherwise, that sound of the cup, you know, what comes with it. However, for purposes of time, I've shared the clubs that have attended our fellowship today in the chat, and I would like to appreciate all of them. We had a total of 29 clubs attending our fellowship today and 3 Rotaract clubs. I would like to thank all of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rotarian James. And once again, to Rotarian Joshua Semakula, thank you very much for having set up the meeting. We're very proud of you. You keep doing this very, very well. And to our panelists, Val, Rukh, Shana, and our moderator, Harriet, thank you for having allowed to be part of us this evening. And to the members of the Rotary Club of Lubowa, I thank you very much for also having taken time off during your holiday to join in. And I'm going to request that we all stand up, and we're going to recite the four-way test together. Kindly have your microphones on, and the final toss will be proposed by our very own the final toss will be proposed by our immediate past president, Elizabeth Chintu Mukalazi. All right, the four-way test.
Could I please have four-way test?
Yes, the four-way test. Can we recite it together? Of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second,
is it
at all concerned? Will it build
and better friendships?
And fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right, thank you, friends. Kindly mute your microphones, and IPP will propose a final toast.
Thank you very much, President. To our dear guests, thank you very much for joining us. And to our presenters and hosts, thank you very much for a wonderful fellowship. It's amazing how beautiful Rotary is and how much it brings out the beauty in the world into our homes right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. And please join me to Rotary International.
Rotary world over.